It's not laziness, right? People who are lazy don't want to work at that particular moment in time. It may not be that they're lazy all the time. I think about a pride of lions, they're very lazy until they're hungry and then they're incredibly active. But people who procrastinate want to work and find that they can't. They are self-sabotaging. They overthink, or they've got the procrastinator's mantra, which is, I'll do it tomorrow.
Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm happy you're here. Before we dig deeper, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, revenge is sweet and swift, isn't it? So that's fine. Hi, I'm Robin J. Emdon. I'm an accountability coach, author of Get Resultsology, The Science of Getting Done, which was published just this last April. And I live here in sunny, sometimes windy, sometimes rainy, South Devon, England. And I broadcast to the world with my own podcast, and I work with clients all over the world as well.
Right. Yeah. If you guys are wondering why he has a British accent, and that's because he's from England. And I feel like I can sit here and just watch and hear you talk for 5 hours. There's just something with British accent that's, very enticing. It's like it's like music to my ears. I wish my accent was kind of like that, but I have the Filipino accent, which I don't hate it, but as long as people can understand me, that's okay.
Yeah, clear as a bell. I understand you really well. There's nothing wrong with your accent at all.
Thank you, Robin. So we're going to talk about mainly your book, which is in your background right now, Get Resultsology. And I was scanning through the book, I don't want to lie. I have not read the entire book, but I have read maybe a quarter of it and look at the table of contents, and I read your personal experience as well. So in the preface of the book, it says there that it took you 10 years to finish a degree that is meant to take only 6 years. So what finally sparked the turning point in your productivity journey?
Okay, sure. So that is my productivity journey. I like that. So my background is I trained in California at an invitation-only training event under Tony Robbins and his faculty back in 2001. His plans changed. It was with a view to getting a job with him at that time. His plans changed. My plans changed. I didn't want to move from the UK. And in any case, his plans had changed considerably. And so I set up my own life coaching business here in the UK. And I tell you this because a couple of years later, 2 or 3 years later, I became a full-time single dad and I parked the coaching, but you never forget the skills. Cut forward to 2019 and I'm sat in a coffee shop talking to my older brother and I'm bragging, I got my degree, yay, look at me, aren't I clever, I finally finished my education. And he wasn't very impressed. That's, brothers for you, I'm not really interested. And then I said, mind you, trust me to take 10 years to do something I should have done in 6. And he said, yeah, what was that about? I thought, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't said that now. And I laughed and I said, procrastination, changed the subject, forgot about it. And then when I was driving home, I wasn't joking when I said it was procrastination. And I realized, hang on a minute, Robin, you're a trained life coach. You don't forget the training. It was brilliant training and one of some of the best in the world. You don't forget the skill sets. In fact, I still use them all the time. But how can I procrastinate? My clients never procrastinate. I don't let them. Oh, okay, so I must know what the cure for procrastination is, right? So then I asked myself 2 questions as I literally, all this happened in the drive on the way home. The first question was coaching questions. The first one was, where else in my life does this appear? And the second question was, what does it cost me? And I realized the answer to the first one was, absolutely everywhere. Procrastination, I cannot think of a moment or an area of my life that it hasn't impacted. And I'm not talking about procrastinating about doing the dishes after dinner. I'm talking about life-changing chronic procrastination day in, day out that really changes your life. And that brought me onto the cost side. And I thought, wait a minute, it's cost me loads. And by the time I got home, I was both really upset, and really angry with myself. And I rang my brother and I said, because my brother used to be a mental health professional, so he still got the training. And I said, just remind me, little mental note, paper and pen, what's the cure for procrastination? I seem to have forgotten. It's just slipped my mind. And there was a sharp intake of breath and then a long pause and then I don't really know. And he probably does now because we've talked about it a lot since then. But that started me on a search. I thought, okay, I need to find out. And then we had the gift that keeps on giving, COVID and all the lockdowns. So that gave me time to research it. So that's what I did. That's how the seed of the idea of the book began.
Wow. I love that. And you mentioned, the cure for procrastination, which you haven't said what it is yet. And I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask you that question later on, but let's define procrastination for a minute. What is it and how does it look like?
Sure. Let's talk about what it isn't for a second. It's not laziness, right? The distinction I make, people can be lazy if they want to be. It's a choice. It's not, and I'm not, who am I to judge? No, they make their own decisions. And laziness, the distinction is people who are lazy don't want to work at that particular moment in time. It may not be that they're lazy all the time. I think about a pride of lions, that they're very lazy until they're hungry and then they're incredibly active, so it's not a judgment. But people who procrastinate want to work and find that they can't. They are self-sabotaging. And there's no rational reason for it. They know it's over-rational. And we dress it up as, some people call it perfectionism, although there's no actual causal link between perfectionism and procrastination, something I found out in the research, which was quite interesting, I think. They overthink, or they've got the procrastinator's mantra, which is, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's about the fact that we are perhaps not as passionate about something as we should be.
Right.
Perhaps it's not urgent, is a big thing. Urgency drives momentum and productivity, but urgency has a price. If you think about the classic procrastinating student who's got like 3 months to do an essay, and they plan it all out, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, week 1, week 2, week 3, get to week 11 and a half, how much work have they actually done? Nothing. And then it's urgent. And then they do a really bad job of trying to get it done in the last 2 or 3 days. But it was the urgency that drove it. So procrastination is all of those things. It's actually very complicated. And underlying it all, as I explain in the book, it's actually biology that drives it, and neurology and psychology. There are sciences behind it, which is why my book is called Get Resultsology. It has an ology in the name for a reason, and that's a dual thing, two scientific things. First, it's because it's based on the science. I found out that there were over 900 research projects done in just one 10-year period in the early 2000s into procrastination. So I didn't need to do fresh research, but I certainly needed to examine the research. And the other reason it's called a science of resultsology is because I've created a duplicatable system, a method. And in science, if you do experiments, they have to be replicable wherever you are in the world.
I love that.
I thought, I'll combine the two.
Yeah, I love that. And let me correct myself. I think I pronounced the name of your book Get Resultsology. Get Resultsology. So it's Get Resultsology.
Yeah, please remember.
Let me make it clear.
No, that's fine. You got it right. It's Get Resultsology.
Get Resultsology. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, to me, procrastination is when I'm not happy about what I'm doing, when I'm not excited about what I'm doing, right? You talk about being passionate about something. So I tend to procrastinate on folding my clothes because I hate folding my clothes. And because I hate it, I found a way how to get my clothes folded. So what I did, I asked my husband, do you want to fold my clothes? Because I don't like folding my clothes. And my husband, he doesn't also like folding clothes, but because I told him, if you fold my clothes, I'm gonna give you a massage for 20 minutes. So he has a reward for folding my clothes. And so now I put my clothes in the washer and in the dryer. When it's done, my husband folds it, And
I bet he does.
Yes, and then but I realized that I don't procrastinate on washing the dishes, because I like the sink, clean. I don't like it cluttered. I don't like, dishes piling up in the sink. And I also like, the feeling of the water touching my skin. And so when I wash the dishes, I enjoy it. So I don't procrastinate on that. Even if there's only 3 plates there, I'm going to wash it. I'm not going to wait for it to pile up because I enjoy doing it. So in my own self-awareness, I realize that I procrastinate on things that I don't like doing, but nobody procrastinates on vacation, right? Everybody wants to go on vacation because it's something that they like doing, they enjoy doing, even though they don't have much money in the bank to go on vacation. But when it comes to like going to the beach, going on vacation somewhere, it's something that everybody, I think, do not, procrastinate. So you you mentioned that procrastination is hardwired into our biology and all that kind of science stuff. Can you explain the brain's threat versus reward mode in simple terms for our listeners? Like if they do something that they hate doing, what would be the reward for them for doing that? Like what's in it for them,
Yes. Okay. You covered a lot of ground there. So let me just go back, take a step back. So let me just say, procrastination, 95% of people when asked will, if they admit to it, because a lot of people won't even admit to it, even to themselves, never mind to anybody else. But 95% of people will say that they procrastinate sometimes. It is hardwired into us. We all do it sometimes. It is part of our natural behavior. And usually it's pretty harmless. That's a very nice reward you talk about there for your husband. But that certainly is a great motivator, but we don't all have that for folding our clothes. And so if we don't feel motivated, they don't get folded. And it's not the end of the world. It's not terrible if they don't get folded today. But of the 95%, 1 in 5 identify as chronic procrastinators. Chronic procrastination is when it's starting to affect really important stuff. And I'm not saying that folding your clothes isn't really important. It might, if you've got an important job and you've got to look smart, it's important. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about the kind of procrastination that is, okay, now this is really starting to annoy me. I'm procrastinating and I can see it's costing me, and yet I'm still doing it, and I can actually see a physical cost. So that is coming from the brain, and it comes from there's 2 parts of the brain. Now, I'm going to get a bit sciencey here, but you need to understand I'm coming from a total layperson perspective. In my last exam at school, which was a very long time ago, I got 9% in biology. And afterwards, when I spoke to the teacher that marked it, I said to him, "Why did I get 9%? I didn't answer any of the questions. None of them. I literally could not remember anything." And he said, "Yeah, but you spelt your name right and I felt sorry for you." And my point is that I didn't remember any of the answers to any of the questions because I could not get my head around sciences. I'm terrible. So when I realized that procrastination is science-based, I thought, well, I can read about it, but then I need to turn it into plain English, which is what my book is about. It's about actually taking the science, lifting it, and saying, how can we make this plain English? So I will tell you about the limbic system, and I will tell you about the prefrontal cortex, and I will name drop a few neurotransmitters, but then I'll try and talk to you about them in plain English. Okay. So the limbic system is the oldest part of your brain. It's your survival instinct. If you think about it, your brain only actually has 2 jobs in your entire life. Number 1, you must survive. That's your brain is completely geared to survival. And it's the survival, fight, flight, or freeze response. If you walk around the corner and there's a tiger coming at you and he's hungry, he wants his lunch, that's what makes you flee, right? Whereas, and that's instinctive. You don't even need to think about it. And it's incredibly powerful. It overrides every other thinking moment in your life because you have to be, you can't think, you just have to run, right? But that can also but in the real world today, unless you live in certain remote parts of the world, being eaten by a tiger is a very, very low risk. But in the world we live in, we have the equivalent of tigers. Unpaid bills, eviction notices, threatening behavior, arguments in our relationships, key relationships which really hurt us, illnesses, unexpected ones, expected ones. These all trigger the same instinctive, and I call it I didn't come up with this, but it's called the threat modality. we feel threatened, and the limbic system springs to life. Now, when the limbic system springs to life, it's very useful if you want to run away from a tiger, but it's not very useful if you want to get a hard day's work done, and all you can think about is that argument you had with your loved one last night, or that illness they've got, or you've got, or that unpaid bill and you have no clue how you're going to pay it, and so on and so forth. It causes us actually to freeze. Hello, procrastination, right? It's and that's part of it. Not being passionate about something enough, like you're passionate about going on holiday. All of those things move us into the passion, move us into the prefrontal cortex. There's an interesting fact about the prefrontal cortex, which sits at the front of your brain, which is that if you're under 25, it's not fully formed. It's the last part of the human brain to be fully formed, right? And which is one of the reasons why the students are the most researched part of the research, because students are notorious procrastinators. And that's partly environment, big part of it. They're in a world where it's possible to procrastinate and get away with it for a long time. And they're also in a world where they just don't yet have the full capacity to rationally think things through. And so when the prefrontal cortex is activated, we call that the reward modality. It's not quite what you were talking about, because reward, or the carrot and stick approach, reward or punishment, is really how we can motivate ourselves to move past procrastination. But the reward modality comes from the prefrontal cortex, which is your rational thinking part of your brain.
Right.
So what I do in the book is I say, okay, what is it that actually happens in your brain that triggers, that means that you're in productive mode, not threat mode? Because, by the way, when you're in threat mode, it's really hard to get out of it. When you're in reward mode, it's really easy to be knocked out of it by something threatening because of that much stronger limbic system. So that's an important distinction, because you need to understand that to get in reward mode, you need to create an environment, a supportive environment, where you can spend as much time there as you can. And in order to be in reward mode, in your prefrontal cortex, where you do your rational thinking, your planning, this is what I need to do, this is what I want to get done, this is what I have to get done, you need 3 neurotransmitters present in your brain. And I promise this is the last bit of science, because I struggle even to remember these, even though I've probably mentioned them a million times. You need dopamine, which is a very famous neurotransmitter. You need noradrenaline, and you need acetylcholine. Now, if you're a scientist, you're going, oh, your ears are picked up. And if you're like me, it's like, oh, your eyes have glazed over right now. What's he talking about? So I will put them into plain English. I call dopamine the conductor. The conductor is the person that leads the orchestra. They take all the desperate, separate instruments that make a cacophony of awful noise, and they create music that's beautiful and harmonious and works and is the music of your life. And they are in charge. You can also call them the captain if you like. I call them the conductor because I like the fact that they're directing all the different parts of your life. Then you have the fun-sized warrior. Now, why is he fun-sized, or she fun-sized? They're like the little snack chocolate bars you can put in your children's lunch, or little fun-sized carrots. There's no such thing really. Fun-sized chocolate, right? Now, you don't want the big warrior. We all have one. That's our limbic system in full go. Yes, I've got to deal with this. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to run. I'm ready to freeze, whatever I need to do to survive, right? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the second point that your brain does is it's about procreation. Right? I did forget to say that, but I left that hanging there. Let's go. So, all right. So, because when you are in full warrior mode, big Kristy warrior with her shield and her armor and her sword or her gun or whatever she uses to fight the world. That's great if you've got to take on a tiger or an army, but it's not so good if you need to go to work, because it creates another neurotransmitter that you don't want around, called cortisol. And when cortisol is present in your body, it shuts everything down but what you need to deal with an emergency. And your work is not usually an emergency. Unless you work in the emergency field, you're in the army, then you need it, right? Obviously, in those situations, you want to be flooded with cortisol because you need it. But you can't live like that every day unless you have to, right? But the fun-sized warrior is what you need to be active and working is you need just a little tiny bit of anxiety, a little bit stressed, a little bit of it on edge. That needs to be a little bit urgent, right? Because that is what actually it produces the noradrenaline, which makes you feel energized and gives you energy and makes you want to do the work, right?
That's why some people, they love challenge, right?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Well, actually, that's part of it, but it's dopamine. Dopamine is that. It's the dopamine hit. Now, the dopamine hit, which is the conductor, dopamine's a very interesting one. Most people have heard of dopamine. We have the dopamine in our pocket, the telephone, which gives us our mobile phones, which gives us the dopamine hits constantly, just scrolling through. Oh, that's an interesting cat video. Oh, there's another cat video. Oh, there's another cat. Oh, that's funny. Or there's some bad news. I love bad news. Oh, I must read about that.
Right.
All of that stuff, games, all of it, right? It gives us dopamine hits, but they're the wrong kind. And so, but we do need dopamine because it gives us a high, a feeling of being high without drugs. It's drug free. It's our own natural body's drug. And when we feel high, we feel energized, we feel on the case, and the conductor of the orchestra, he or she is out there. And as my phrase I use, they are ready to kick bottom, right? But unfortunately, you can get it met negatively, you can get dopamine negatively, you can get it positively, okay? So, but you're right, yeah, we want that, we crave it. And I'll come back to that point in a second. There are two kinds of people in very broad terms. The final one that I wanted to mention was the scholar. And the scholar is acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that is very prevalent in children. I don't know if you know any children. I remember I was one once. And I'm guessing you were too. When you're a child, your capacity to focus is immense. Now, children are easily distracted. I've got gas, help, and they'll scream the house down until you've burped them. But otherwise, if you give them never mind a toy, give them the box the toy came in, and they'll play with it for hours and hours and hours, completely happy, completely focused. They'll watch the same movie over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, never get bored, because they're very, very focused. Unfortunately, as adults, we lose acetylcholine. It's no longer naturally present in our bodies. We have to manufacture it artificially, not artificially as in externally, but we have to create the conditions for our brain to need it. But as a child, now children need it because they have to learn. They have to learn to walk, they have to learn to talk, they have to learn language. Gosh, right. How hard is that? They have to learn everything they need to survive because they need to survive. And they're very, very vulnerable for a very long time. And yet their progression from being this big to being a fully grown teenager that can survive by themselves, or they tell their parents, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing, because the acetylcholine and their ability to focus help them to do that. Survival, survival, survival. But in an adult, you need acetylcholine for focus just as much as a child does. And when it's been present, when your body's been manufacturing it, when the scholar is present, is when you look at one of these, you look at your watch, or these days people look at the phone, the clock on their phone, and then you say, right, okay, so I've been doing this for 5 minutes, and then you look at your watch, oh wait, no, I've been here for like 3 hours. Time flies when you're focused. So the scholar's been in the building, right? If you're looking at your watch and it's going round and you go, oh, I've been here for 3 hours. Oh no, wait, that's I have been here for 3 hours. It's felt like 3 hours. Then you're probably struggling with focus. You're probably very distracted. So the final point to say is you mentioned about how some people are adventure driven, dopamine. Right. Dopamine junkies, we call it. Mm-hmm. And that's because no two people are alike. And there are, in very broad terms, we are literally people. Not only are we hardwired to procrastinate, but we're all hardwired differently. And very broad brushstrokes, very broad brushstrokes. I call it the tortoise and the hare, the old Aesop's fable. Tortoise personalities are very patient, and they need dopamine just as much as everybody else. But they get their dopamine hits by being very patient and working long, sometimes for years. If you think about people that win the Nobel Prize for physics, they can work on something for decades before they get it. They're not really working for the prize, but it will take them decades to achieve the thing they're trying to achieve. Whereas the The hare is in a tearing hurry. And the way I describe about it, if you think about the working environment, the tortoise will be like, oh, my train is coming in an hour and a half. If I don't leave in the next hour, that 10 minutes it takes me to get to the train, I might miss it. Whereas the hare will be like, all right, well, if I've got 5 minutes to get to the train, it takes 10 minutes to get there. I've got a minute. I'll run. And they love it. And they describe their weekends. The classic tortoise will say, well, on Saturday I'm going kayaking down a river, and on Sunday I'm climbing a mountain. What are you doing, Kristy? And you might say, you might be a tortoise personality, I don't know, and you might say, I was just going to read a book and sit by the pool and drink a glass of wine, actually. Yeah, well, that's what you're going to do when you get up in the morning. What are you going to do after? No, I'm going to do that all weekend. Huh? It will be they don't relate. But the tortoises will procrastinate because they're searching for, I need this to be right. That perfectionism can come into it, although it's not, as I say, it's not a causal thing or procrastination, but they are unsure. They're detail orientated. They're brilliant at detail. They make very good scientists. The tortoise, the hares, you would think, well, they don't procrastinate, but they do. And that's because they're always searching for the next dopamine hit. And if something's not exciting enough, then they're on to the next thing, and they're on to the next thing. And the things that need to get done don't get done.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's very insightful. So in your current practice right now, what do you see is the number one thing that people procrastinate, specifically, let's say, entrepreneurs? And what is your recommendation on how to get out of that procrastination?
Yeah, well, the number one thing is the number one thing that I suffer with. I mean, I wrote the book, but I lived the book. Right? Yeah. And I've described all the pain that goes with it, and then the book takes you through understanding what procrastination is, because that's part of the solution. When you understand it, you can catch it. Think about it in these terms. If you catch yourself procrastinating today, you've still got today to do something about it, right? If you catch yourself procrastinating, but you realize it happened yesterday, last week, last month, last year, last 10 years, you can't get time back. You can make more money. Money is infinite because they can just print it, but you can't print more time.
Right.
And so I teach people, like teaching them to fish rather than giving them a fish. I teach them the understanding, which is what I've covered a little bit here about the brain. So now you know what's going on. Then the next thing is catch yourself. And then the next thing is, so now there's a toolbox in my book, the second section of strategies, a pick and mix section for the different personalities, because no one person will work the same way with the same strategies, right? Right. And then the third section deals with the thing that I address. I am answering your question, by the way. I haven't forgotten it. The third thing is that momentum is the third thing, not motivation. Motivation is critical. We need motivation to get going, but momentum. Behind me, I've got a cupboard full of books, of planners and journals, all kinds of weird, wonderful and wacky systems. Brilliant, most of them, absolutely brilliant. Helped me get over procrastination for a while, and then they wore off, and then I stalled, and then eventually, that doesn't work anymore. Some of them I used for years, and now they don't work anymore. Right? I'm kind of aware of them, but don't use them. Right? People who have no boss, or people who have long gaps between the time that they have to get something done and the time that there's going to be consequences for it not being done. Right. They tend to struggle with procrastination because it's a feature of procrastination. If you think about the student that's given 3 months to write an essay, right? That just feels like forever. It's not urgent enough. It's not driving enough. It's not motivating enough. They think they have enough time. They always get that wrong. They're just not motivated. And people who work for themselves with no boss, they have big dreams. There are so many people out there working for themselves or in a small business. They're going to change the world if only they could just get on with it. But the thing is, when I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror, it's the boss looking back. Now, he's a lunatic, but he's my lunatic. But the thing is, no one is making him work today. Yes, I've got meetings to go to. I've got clients. I'm very responsible about that, and I'm very accountable to them. And so I don't let them down. But when it comes to doing other things that I need to get done, go for a walk, watch the TV, play with my kids when they were little. That's how I procrastinated those years away. All the things that we do, go and sit on the beach, whatever we do, rather than work, because no one is checking in on us. And I realized that third section was, there are lots of strategies in there. If you read the book, you'll find that it's 95% of it is about how to self-empower, how to get unstuck, how to get over being stalled permanently. And for most people, that's enough. And for some people, well, there's a few people out there that never procrastinate. God bless them, because they give us all the clues about how to overcome it. But they're just wired differently, to be honest. They're just wired differently. And good luck to them. Genuinely, I love it when I meet someone that doesn't procrastinate. But for the rest of us, you need strategies, you need a toolkit. And for some of us, the final element I discovered, which is why I rebooted my business, because I'd stopped life coaching, and then I thought, wait a minute, 80% of my clients were getting 20% of the results from accountability. Somebody saying, if you don't get this done by the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, there will be consequences. Now, it might be that there will be no consequences for a year in terms of the big picture, but I'd never have written my book, for example, if I didn't, so many people said to me, oh yeah, I was thinking about writing a book about procrastination, and I'm still thinking about it, procrastinating. I procrastinated while I was writing the book, of course I did. But I kept thinking about consequences if I don't get it done. Consequences. And so when you bring in accountability that's the one thing, by the way, you can't recreate if you work for yourself. I love my coffee. I have the most fantastic coffee machine. It's a little machine, but I make it from bean to cup myself, and I can bore you to death about my coffee. I have a fantastic view from my window. I live in a beautiful part of the world. I live in South Devon, and it's absolutely fabulous. Highly recommend anybody to come and visit it. It's gorgeous. But I cannot, and I've got nice broadband. That's we are talking. But I cannot recreate having a boss. I don't want to. I'm a terrible employee. I always tell my bosses exactly what I think, and they don't like it. But I can't recreate having someone to be accountable to in that sense, unless I enroll with an accountability, either an accountability buddy, a friend, or I have an accountability coach. Now, I've had buddies over the years. There are good points about it, and there are bad points. I'm completely in favor of it, but there are some warnings I give in the book about picking a buddy. For example, don't make your husband your accountability buddy. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not his job. All right. But if you go to a professional like me, they're trained, they know what they're doing, and they know also how to enter your model of the world. They're non-judgmental, in other words, right? Which is very important. Sometimes our buddies can be a little bit judgmental, not always. So you have to pick them carefully. But I realized that the whole picture fell into place. And by the way, I didn't do it lightly. I discovered that the research was pointing at it. The research was finding that they did, for example, a project in 2007, the Dominican University of California. Gail Matthews led a project into goal setting, right? And I know that it's one of the questions you wanted to ask me about goal setting is, well, how is goals different from having a personal life vision? And the distinction I make is because goals set up a little bit of bonus material you didn't ask me for, but I'm going to give it you anyway. Goals set up a feeling of obligation. And if you're feeling obliged, what does that set up? Stress. Where does stress live in our brain? In the limbic system. It's threat modality. And so we resist. That's why sometimes people call procrastination resistance, right? So I digress, but not entirely. But the personal life vision is different. Personal life vision is somebody just like, I'm going to be a doctor I'm going to be an oncologist in 15 years time. So why have I got to write that essay today? Because I want to be an oncologist in 15 years time. And if I don't get a good grade on that essay today, I won't get my qualifications further down the road, right? And an accountability coach comes in and says, right, okay, so what do you need to get done today to achieve your dream 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 years from now, right? And so where I was coming from on this was that the accountability element that the Dominican University of California discovered was, if you just say to people, right, just try and achieve your goals, don't write them down, don't do anything except work on them for a month. About 43% of them said, After a month, they had achieved them or were well on the way to achieving them. Great, that's what you'd expect. And most people can keep something up for a month. But when she then went through several different layers, when she got up to layer 5, which was full accountability, emails, report back to someone external to you, tell them what you're doing, be accountable for it, consequences for doing it. The success rate after just 1 month rose from 43% to 76%. 33% dramatic improvement. And I always point out to people, think about it. If you could get 33% more of your goals achieved every single month for a year, the exponential growth in your potential income, your potential turnover would be huge. Now I'm back talking about goals when I've just said that goals set up an obligation. Well, the distinction I make is goals should be treated as milestones. We do use goals, but you have to find a way of taking the sting out of them and making them feeling less obligating. Not full warrior mode, fun size mode. And fun size mode is having a bit of a laugh about it and a bit of fun with your coach perhaps, and say, well, okay, let's see what we can achieve by the end of the week. It doesn't feel quite so stressful as, I mean, if I tell you the workload I've had this week, if I told myself how much work I wanted to get done last Friday, that I wanted to get done by Friday this week, and it's Thursday today, I'd never have started. But I broke it down into fun size pieces.
Right. I love that. And I am an ambassador of, having an accountability buddy or accountability coach, accountability partner, because I know how important it is, right, to have that kind of person to be accountable with so that you can get stuff done. So I want to talk about in practicality. Let's say there's an entrepreneur who is in a threat mode because 5 clients canceled their subscriptions all at the same time, and this person doesn't have enough money to pay their bills, to pay their team members, and do not know how to replace those clients that canceled. So in short, this person feels like it's the end of the world for them, right? But because of that, they procrastinate on the things that they should be doing to replace those 5 clients, because clients are replaceable, right? Everybody is replaceable. If you want to replace them, only if you want to replace them. Let's make that clear. So how should that person overcome that situation by not procrastinating and getting back on track, like getting that dopamine hit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is where you get the difference between an accountability buddy who may be able to help you and an accountability coach who will have the skill sets to help you. So what I would say is to that is that you have to get your client, if it was my client, or what you're talking about as the entrepreneur, they have to get back into a resourceful state. Okay, and what you're describing is they are in their most unresourceful state, and they're in complete threat modality. And I know what it's like to be completely shut down. And sometimes, even now, I get like, I had a day last week where I had some very bad news, and I was working like a donkey, going crazy or something, and then some bad news arrived, and I'm like, I can't work. I physically can't work. And so what you need to do is you need to come up with coping mechanisms for dealing with that. So that sounds a bit woolly, but basically I talk about it in terms of you need to break the pattern. Okay, so it's like, okay, I recognize, I understood. I thought, oh, I've gone into full procrastination mode here. No, that's no good. I still need to get a day's work done. All right, I need to get resourceful. I need a plan. And the key to that is believe it or not, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's structure. You need to build structures into your day, routines, things that don't require thinking, decisions that were taken beforehand. You just need to act on them. Anything that gets you moving and into action, even if it's only for a couple of minutes can become 5 minutes, can become 10 minutes, can become an hour, can become a day. If you're still struggling, you still need to break your pattern. One of the things I learned a long time ago, I learned it from Tony actually, is that you have to break the limiting behavior. You have to break the pattern. So if you've gone into this place of unresourcefulness, I mean, one of the things that I would do in a different situation is I'd say to somebody, if I was working with you as a client face to face, not over the phone, I say, I'm just going to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Will you come with me? And you follow and you get them a glass of water. And by the time they sat back down, what was that you were saying again? And they're like, oh, what was it again? I've forgotten. And I'll change the subject before they get there. I probably wouldn't even ask them that because that would be a rookie mistake. But we'll get talking about resourceful things. You have to do the same. And so, in fact, what you need to do is, you may need to deal with it. You need to process it. If it's a shock, for example, if it's like you're talking about something that's just built up over time, I seem to be losing more clients than I'm gaining. There's a deeper uncertainty there. And you need to get resourceful about, well, what needs to happen? See, an accountability coach doesn't come in and try and tell you how to run your business. I don't know. For all I know, your business is, maybe you're a hairdresser. What do I know about hairdressing? Nothing. But what I do know is that you know a lot. And what you don't know, you can find out. And so I'll work with you to help you get into that resourceful state so that, we'll ask questions. It's all about questions. Asking better quality questions will get you better quality answers. So if it's like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I get enough clients? Right? You're going to have a terrible day. And that is where you go with the procrastination. A coach will turn it around and say, okay, that's that. If you're going to ask a silly question, you're going to get a crazy answer. But let's ask a better question. What could I do that I'm not doing right now that would be of interest to people in my field, right? Typically, what else can I do? Get resourceful. Start thinking outside the box. What else can you do? What else can you do? What else can you do? And they'll resist. I used to resist, so I know that. But eventually it's like, oh yeah, I can think about that. I can think about that. I can do that. I can do that. And they'll start coming up with a plan. And as soon as they start coming up with a plan, you strategize. And you come back to that point that I was saying about, and then you start building structure into your day. If you can go to structure, whether it's just an hour in the morning where you just give yourself some time to prepare for the day, other than searching for your kids' lost shoes, which is how I used to start my day, right? Which is not a good way to start the day. It happens, but you need that hour before to prepare yourself. If there are things that you can do on autopilot, I find sometimes there are things I can do that just need doing, and they're work related. I just need to do this, and when I start working, all right, now I've done that. Oh, I think I'll go and tackle this now. It's change your pattern, change your limiting beliefs, change your thinking about something, and don't dwell on the things that are worrying you. Dwell on the problem, dwell on the solutions.
Right. I like that. That makes sense. So in the book, you also talk about creating, and you also mentioned this just a few minutes ago, about creating a personal life vision.
Yes.
That's kind of like to help people know their why, and that specific why is what helps them get things done. And you also
because
talk
it's emotional.
Right, exactly. And you also talk about energy management, like staying in momentum. So can you talk about those two things?
Yes. In fact, the answer to the question is, how do I get into motion? How do I get moving? And the answer is, you need to know your why. Goals aren't your why. Goals are things, are milestones you have to achieve along the way. They can stress you out, which I've mentioned. But your why is, where are you going with all this? Who do you see yourself as 5, 10, 15 years from now? And in the book, I call it the personal life vision, and I plonk it 15 years out, which may or may not be a good time for you, but it's so far out for most people, it doesn't get restricted by the feelings of, that's not realistic. I hate that word. Because what's realistic for you, and I say, is unrealistic for me, and vice versa. Realism can be very subjective, usually is in terms of our own behaviors. Oh, it's not realistic that I want to be an astronaut. Why not? Well, I'm 105 years old. Okay, that's probably true. But it's because I'm British and we don't have an astronaut program. Okay, we've had British astronauts go up in space. Okay, I think we've had one or two, because that wasn't a limitation for them, right? And so that's important. The personal life vision, though, is your why. And the distinction I make is when we write down goals, we do actually write them down. That's what Gail Matthews did in the Dominican University study in 2007. She got people to write them down. And that's great to a degree. I'm not a great goal maker believer in myself because I focus more on the personal life vision, which is the why are these goals important? The answer to milestone goal making is because it leads me closer to my personal life vision. In the book, I dedicate a whole chapter to crafting your personal life vision, and I encourage you to write it down, but only for the benefit of becoming familiar with what it is that works for you. You don't have to memorize it in the way that you learn every line. Learn it, you know, that might appeal to you, but you not like, you know, people are, one of the things that you do, people who are very hot on goal writing will write them down every single day. There's a British celebrity, I won't say who it is because it's not relevant. There's a British celebrity that says, I've never written a goal down in my life, but I'm a multi-millionaire. And he is. And he's a hugely successful TV celebrity, hugely successful. Never written a goal down in his life. That's because, although he's not saying it, it's because he had a strong vision of what he wanted to do. And then what he wanted to do was to make TV programs about his specialist field, and he enjoyed it and he loved it and he was passionate about it, and it made him rich, made himself rich actually. He's a very clever man, right? And I won't mention his name because it'll become emotive because he's a little bit like him or loathe him kind of personality. But the point is he didn't write his goals down, but he had a very strong vision. He just knew that he was passionate about his subject, right? And he had a very strong vision for what that meant and what he wanted to do with it. He wanted to write about it. He wanted to talk about it. He wanted to, and he got paid for it. And he got paid. In the end, he got paid millions for it. And having that why, having that personal life vision, the place for it is not on paper, but in here, in your mind. So when you wake up in the morning, when Kristy wakes up in the morning, whatever Kristy's personal life vision is for her life, the first thing she should see before she opens her eyes is, who is she becoming? There's no problem, by the way, with who we are now. Who we are now is great. But who do we see ourselves becoming 5, 10, 15 years from now? Where are we going, right? In the book, I use the simple analogy of a doctor again, an oncologist I pick out, because a doctor in the UK, it takes 7 years to become a doctor, but then it may take another 7, 8 years to become an oncologist, right? It's so far out. It is so far out but if you visualize it, if you see it, if you hear it, if you believe it, if you feel it as though it's already happened, although you know rationally it hasn't, you kind of start stepping into the shoes of that, becoming that person. And then you just instinctively know the reason that I'm folding my clothes today is because in 15 years time, the folding of my clothes today, like the butterfly analogy of when a butterfly flaps its wings, it's felt on the other side of the universe, right? It's the same thing. It has an effect 15 years down the road. Those folded clothes are part of the picture that creates the person I want to become in 15 years time.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So to just kind of give a summary of what we talk about today, and feel free to add on to this, first, you got to understand the root problem. You have to understand, the emotions behind it, and you got to have a strategy, know your why, and making sure that you have a plan to get out of that situation, right? And understand your motivations as well. What increases it, what decreases your motivation to do things, and also having accountability. Is there anything you want to add to those things?
I think I've said enough, haven't I?
Is there any advice that you want to give to an entrepreneur who is experiencing chronic procrastination right now?
Well, it sounds self-serving. I guess it is self-serving in a way. Get help, right? I alluded to something actually a few times and didn't expand on it. A lot of people think that perfectionism means that you're a procrastinator. Again, the research actually demonstrated, and there's been several research projects into perfectionism and its connection to procrastination. There is no causal link between the two things. A perfectionist doesn't necessarily procrastinate, and a procrastinator isn't necessarily a perfectionist. But perfectionism is a behavior that some procrastinators indulge in as procrastinating behavior. That's the point. but there's no causal link between them. Why does that matter? Because perfectionists don't tend to procrastinate forever because they get help. They don't like it. Procrastinators, on the other hand, like me, tend to think of it as I did for a very long time, like I thought of a head cold. Oh, I've got a cold. I'll get over it in a few days. I'll be fine. Right? Oh, I'm procrastinating. Oh, I'll get over it in a few days. I'll be fine. I never thought about it. That's my story. That's why I didn't notice it for decades. Oh yeah, everybody procrastinates. I didn't join up the dots. Facepalm moment, 2019. Oh my God, what am I doing? Right? Why didn't I pick up on this earlier? Because I didn't think about it in the right way. So procrastinators need to get help. And the help for a procrastinator is self-serving, I know, an accountability coach. The only distinction is there are millions of procrastinators in the world, and I only have 12 clients at a time. So there are an awful lot of accountability coaches out there. You don't have to employ me. You can go to any of them. You can get a free accountability buddy. Not entirely free, because you usually have to reciprocate. So there's a time cost. Right. And you have to pick the right one. And don't ask someone your nearest and dearest. It's not fair. That's not their job. They'll hold you accountable. Don't you worry about it. But it's not fair to make it their job. So yeah, that's my core message. Number one message is get help. And I produced, sorry, pick that up. There's my book, which you've got on behind me. But there's the book. Now you can get the book. I'm going to give a plug here, but for a reason. You can get the book on Amazon. You can buy it as a printed book. But I don't want to give it away. I don't want to. You don't have to buy it. What I'm trying to say is, you can have it for free, because I give it away as a free PDF, and I'll give you the link if you want me to. But the point is, the book will get you 95% of the way there. But if you want that, in Britain I call it the belt and braces approach, where you hold your, Americans call them pants, we call them trousers in the UK. You hold your pants up with belt and braces. Belt is all you need, braces is on top, or the other way around. So the belt and braces approach is to get an accountability coach. If you've got something that you absolutely positively must make progress on, and you know that it's going to make you a lot of money, increase turnover, build your dreams, whatever, you need an external accountability coach. Now, my type of coaching is we try and build it so that eventually there's an off-ramp, because I don't want to create a dependency on them. I'm going to try and teach you good habits. But the point is, that's down to you in the end, whether you do learn them. I mean, I teach them, down to you whether that's of value to you or not. But the point is that is the one thing that you cannot get from just there's no book in the world that will cure your procrastination in the way that an external accountability coach will get you over that hump. Right. But for most people, the book will be enough. And I give the book away as a PDF. If they want it, if I can just give a plug, they can just go to my, I have a special dedicated domain, reallyusefultips.com. That's really, as in, yes, I really do give the whole book away, all 80,000 words. It's not a short book. This is a serious book, but it's written in plain English. I don't buy it, honestly. So it's really, really serious. Useful as in, I hope you find it incredibly useful. And tips as in, it's full of them.
Right, yeah. And just by hearing about the book today, because everything you talked about is in the book, right? And like I said, yesterday, I downloaded the PDF and I scanned through it, and it's a lot of meat, That's why I was able to ask you questions about the book today, because the content is really good, and I feel like it's not also very confusing. It's not rocket science. No. You just have to understand the problem and then follow, simple steps. As long as you're consistent, and you are accountable, you can get out of procrastination. So before we end our interview today, I always ask this at the end of the interview. What do you want to, I almost forget. I almost forget to ask you the question. So my previous podcast guest, he asked the question, and I want you to answer the question. And then after you answer the question, it's your time to ask a question to my next podcast guest.
Okay.
So my previous podcast guest question is, when you have time off, how do you truly separate yourself from work and find peace in the moment, especially as a founder or business owner?
That's a very good question. And I used to find taking time off incredibly difficult, because the whole time I was taking off, I was physically, I've taken some time off, but my head was still in my work. Right? And switching off became an issue to the point that in the end it's like, I might as well not bother, might as well just carry on working. Right? But there's a price to pay for all that. And if you want to be productive, you need to understand that your brain needs a break. And actually, your best thinking, if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, creative, freelancer, you need to think. And your best thinking happens when you're not thinking. So I realized that taking time off was actually a part of my working life, but it's a very nice part. It's a free part. So what I do now is I pre-decide when my day is going to be done. It's done. I decide what I need to get done. I just decide, right, I'm going to shut down now, that I'm going to make the next 24 hours from midnight to midnight. I just don't work. And that's okay. I've given myself permission to do that because I understand that some of my best ideas and my best thinking comes from the time when I'm not thinking. The analogy I give, I think a lot of people will understand the story of the idea. I don't know where the idea came from, but I was in the shower at the time and suddenly this idea flashed into my head, right? That's true. A lot of creative people will tell you that happens to them all the time. And it's often literally in the shower, but it can be other places too, other times. But it comes at a time when you're not really thinking. The analogy I wanted to give you is like, have you ever tried to pull a door open where there's a glass? It's glass, and on the other side in reverse is a sign that's translucent and it says pull. And your brain doesn't quite connect. Oh, pull, you know it's the wrong way around, but you still try and pull the door. Even though it's for people going through the other side. You have to push to get through, but you pull. And no matter how hard you pull, that door is never going to open for you. And that is a mind that doesn't allow itself time to have some space to just relax. But when you push the door, it opens effortlessly. And that only happens when you've had a break. And so for me, time off now is actually probably one of the most productive things I can do. And that's why I do it.
I love it. That is a very good answer. I'm sure people are going to find a lot of value from that answer. So now, what question would you like to ask my next guest?
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to say you did give me some advance notice. Otherwise, I'd be asking them, to tell me about what the weather is in the part of the world, something like that. But I have tried to come up with a question that's kind of themed with what we've been talking about today.
Right.
So we all have those high energy days when things just flow, but it's the messy, unglamorous days that really test us. So here's my question for your next guest. When your motivation runs dry, what helps you stay in motion?
I love that question. I'm so excited for the next guest to answer that question. But Robin, this has been a great time. I love the insights that you gave, and I'm sure people are going to love everything that you shared on this podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And I know you already gave the link to download your free PDF. Would you like to also share your social media links or your other personal websites? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Actually, you said it's not rocket science, but I have a website, a domain called skyrocketyourproductivitychallenge.com. So that's rocket science. That will take you to another freebie. If you're not a reader, I understand, by the way, not everyone's going to read 80,000 words. I get that. I'm a procrastinator, remember? I buy a lot of books. In my book, I call it sunduku, the Japanese word that means buying books on self-development and then stacking them high and never reading them. It's called sunduku. There's actually a word for it. Look it up. I don't know if it's on self-development, but I think it is. But it's definitely, and I call them my self-development books that sit on my shelves. So for those people, I've created a little 5-day challenge, free. It's based on the book, and you can find that at skyrocketyourproductivitychallenge.com. And if you want to connect with me, 2 ways. First, in the book, at the end of chapter 1, I encourage you to sign a pledge, hold yourself accountable, and email the pledge to me. Everyone gets an answer that does that, absolutely everybody. And I don't charge for that, obviously, that's my pleasure. And they all get read by me. That's important to me. I want to hear from people in that way. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. Just look me up, Robin J. Emdon on LinkedIn, and you'll find me there. And I'm always pleased to connect with you if I know that that's where you're coming from. It's a pleasure to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin, for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for listening to me waffle on and speaking for England. Proof positive that I can speak for England.